The Netherlands is consistently ranked as one of the most connected countries globally. That means we're really open to people coming from abroad, living and working in the Netherlands. It also means we're really diverse in terms of investment that we're getting from a bunch of different directions. And that is, a big attraction, right? So living in the Netherlands, even when you don't speak Dutch, it's probably the easiest country to live in that sense, outside of Anglo-Saxon countries, right? Where with English you can really get around quite well. The other attraction is that we have relatively liberal visa policies, right? So it's relatively easy to stay here and bring over family members as well, which makes us attractive. And generally, the country is incredibly well connected, right? So even when you stay in the Netherlands, it's very easy to travel around in Europe, right, and visit many other regions that are, different and allow you to have different experiences in a short amount of travel time, right? So in terms of that connection, I think we're quite unique in the Netherlands, right? And clearly Europe contributes to that as well. The other thing I add to that, I think, is the balance between work and free time, right? So quality of life, I consider to be quite high. People sort of work to live rather than live to work in the Netherlands, right? We do work hard, but we work smart, right? So there's a nice balance here as well, which I think is quite attractive. And then finally, right, it's a packed country with many sectors where a lot of things are happening. In many sectors, we're leading globally as well, right? So there's a lot of innovation, a lot of change going on. So whatever your ambition is, whatever sector you want to get into, right, there's something there for you. So I always find that really interesting, right? We can cater to quite a wide audience. But it also means we have really big opportunities for learning experiences, right? There's a lot we can learn from what's going on in the Netherlands that we can easily bring into the program, right? And that ranges from the transition in our food systems and agriculture to, massive technological innovations with, for instance, chip production and ASML, right? All of that is packed in a small country. So for me, also that makes the Netherlands quite a unique place, right, to do an MBA. Even if you do not consider living or working in the Netherlands afterwards, right, there's still a great opportunity to learn. Currently, we have 99% of our classroom coming from outside of the Netherlands in terms of nationality. We do have quite a few that were already living in the Netherlands though, so the proportion of people that have a connection to the Netherlands is slightly higher than 1%. But of the entire cohort, on average, about 70% actually finds a job in the Netherlands. 80 or a little bit upwards of 80% find a job in Western Europe. And a small proportion actually goes back to their home country or their home region to find a job, right? So indeed, that's reflected in our ranking, right? The program is also recognized for providing that, right, to students. So we get students also with that goal, right? And we try and deliver on that.
What do we attribute that to? Well, I think no program is single-handedly going to make this kind of a move happen for a student. It's always a partnership between working with the MBA program, the Career Services Corporate Relations Office, and your peers and other people who are within the MBA program, and really how do you make that happen for yourself. One thing I will say though is we do benefit from having a favorable ratio of career advisory and corporate relations to students. So there's quite a high touch here, but I think it really also speaks to the mindset of the students. We tend to attract a student who is interested in making a change, and often that's a geographic change, so it's sort of a subset of the entire applicant pool that's out there in the world in any given year. I think we also attract a subset of applicants who are quite focused on some specific industries in Switzerland and Germany that we tend to have some close relationships with. So, there's certainly industries that we are not good at helping applicants find roles within. So we've created a deliberate sort of niche. It happens somewhat organically, and then we've intensified our work around that niche. So if someone wants to, for instance, work for the UN or go into marketing and communications or real estate, these are not industries that we're working with heavily. I mean, we do have the odd student who goes there, but there's going to be a lot of legwork that they have to do on their own. So I think part of our success is really the fact that there's this subset of industries and subset of applicants, and we're quite well matched there. I think it's also important to mention that this is what the FT values when you're looking at that international mobility metric, and I encourage anybody who uses rankings to understand the methodology. So they measure it based on your citizenship and where you worked before the MBA, directly after graduation, and 3 years afterwards. And that's just one way to value an MBA program. There's lots of great MBA programs in the world that are really focused on domestic students who are looking for domestic jobs in the local area. That's a fabulous way to develop a strong program too. It's just that the FT ranking doesn't seem to value that. So I always encourage people to use a little bit of critical thinking when they're looking into these kinds of metrics.
It is actually quite important to me. We are currently figuring out how can we do a little bit better. So ideally, I would want to have a cohort that is a little bit more grounded, if I can use that term, right? Where we have slightly more people that are local. Also, Western Europe is a tough market to recruit students from, right? And ideally, we have a mix of students where still we have a dominant minority that comes from the home region. I think that helps. That helps with the quality of our classroom discussions, right? Where people understand more quickly what is going on here. But it also helps the cohort in general, right? It's very practical issues of, being able to translate stuff from Dutch into English, right? Understanding cultural dynamics, right? All these things become a bit easier when we also have more local representation. And then secondly, I firmly believe that we have a super strong program. And that means we should also be able to tap in our local market. Currently, we're in a situation where for the full-time programs, right, the dominant mode for most Dutch people, for instance, to go abroad, which makes sense. But we have a few very good examples of people that have deliberately chosen actually to do an RSM MBA full-time. If you look at our executive MBA, right, which is a part-time program, the picture is almost reversed, right? So there we have people that are locally based that come into our part-time program, and they do intermingle quite a bit also with our full-time cohort, right? So that is in terms of the student mix. The other part of it is that we know there is a massive demand for highly skilled and all-around managers in the Netherlands. So we have still incredible density of big firms, headquarters, emerging firms, and they need that international talent. So although in the Netherlands we're also experiencing this wave, right, which is going a little bit against immigration. At the moment, if you look at the market, we do not see a direct reaction there yet. Clearly, it's hard to predict where we go in the future. But currently we're in a really good position still where, there's a massive demand for these kinds of people that already have work experience, right? And they're there to try to commit to working and living in the Netherlands. And then I guess the third thing that I would mention here again is that learning opportunity. So increasingly we're also trying to embed our program in the local environment. Where, for instance, we now have a project, an impact project, where we collaborate actually with the city of Rotterdam. So we're challenging our students to actually figure out how they can have a positive impact on the city and contribute to local challenges and local problems through impact entrepreneurship, things like that. So that's another important part in terms of how we cater to our local environment, right? That the international students that are getting a lot from the country and the city also feel the responsibility to give something back, which I find very important to demonstrate this day and age, that there is added value of getting people from abroad into our city. I think we have a very, in principle, quite a dynamic program and a path that I think is also quite interesting. I don't have all the numbers, but I imagine that many people would come here, do the MBA, work and live here for 5 years, maybe 10 years, but then ultimately also may go back to their home region, right? So they extend their learning and experience for a long period of time. And that, is an opportunity that, the entire world in principle could benefit from, right? So brain drain is not a word that I would ever associate with our MBA program.
Our domestic students tend to gravitate towards our part-time program. And part-time programs, executive programs, hybrid, blended, flex programs, these present healthy challenges for full-time programs. These are people who don't want to quit their jobs. They want to steepen their growth curve while remaining working, and they have lots of interesting options to do that now. And so I think the question for us becomes, how do we create a full-time MBA program that is so compelling you're willing to quit your job for it? And I think that's a great question for all full-time MBA programs to be asking themselves going forward.
This is an interesting question. I've been thinking about that quite a bit since I became academic director of the MBA. Right? There's two sides to it. On the one end, I think, especially in the Netherlands, an MBA is quite rare. So, you have a scarce skill set, right? That puts you actually at an advantage of most other people that compete in the job market. The flip side is, though, that the MBA is not naturally recognized, right? So just mentioning that you have an MBA doesn't do a whole lot, right? So there's some work that you would need to do to actually sell yourself and explain and educate actually employers what it means to have an MBA, right? And I recognize that some of our students find it a little bit harder, right? They do not naturally feel that they're not naturally able to convince that message, the value of the MBA. But most of our students are quite good at that. And actually our whole career's trajectory is also set up to train you, right? To train you we don't place you, but we train you, right? We give you the skills, you get workshops to position yourself in the market in a very confident manner, right? And then I think you can outcompete many other people that are there. In terms of composition, right, we have one of the most internationally diverse classrooms, right? So every cohort will have at least 25 plus different nationalities, if not 30 plus, which again is one of the bigger, I think, bigger qualities of our program, right? That you get the international experience just by being in the classroom. So again, also for a local student, right, going to our MBA is still a very international experience if you're in your home country. Right, so that's one. On terms of mobility, right, that is really the opportunity to, or basically providing our students with a platform from which they can launch an international career and basically work anywhere, right? Be it working in the Netherlands, which is relatively easy post MBA, but in principle our program is set up to learn about global challenges in the Netherlands and gain knowledge and skills that you could apply anywhere in the world. Right, and we see that reflected, right? So our students end up in many different places, not just in the Netherlands or their home region, but also outside of that. What I think in general, what is great about Europe, without saying anything about other regions, is that it's very easy to get that rich, diverse, and international experience, right? So you're exposed to a very international cohort, you're exposed to a multicultural society, but also you're exposed to a wide diversity of sectors. And I believe that in many areas, Europe is also leading when it comes to tackling global problems, right? So we can learn a lot from what's going on in Europe. It's not all great and perfect, right? But in many ways, we know that some of these challenges that Europe is trying to lead on are also relevant or will be very relevant elsewhere, right? So again, Europe is a very good place to learn about the state of the world and mostly also the future of the world.